I was drafted in December of 1967 and got to Vietnam in June of '68. I was sent with 6 or 8 other guys as replacements to Firebase Airborne near Khe Sanh. It was a patch of dirt and bunkers, wire, fighting positions, and guns. My very first task was to help load 3 body bags onto the same chopper that just dropped me. That set the tone for the rest of my tour. Airborne was a fire support base, a ring of dirt surrounded by jungle. It wasn't a place you could ever get comfortable, not even after you'd been there a while. Most of the time it was loud, with the big guns firing all of the time. Between fire missions we worked on bunkers, sandbags, timber, dirt, more sandbags. The rain would tear it up and the blast from incoming would finish the job. Everything was filthy, the dirt even got in your teeth. We had been getting hit off and on, not full attacks. Mostly just harassing fire, mortars, rockets. Sometimes a few rounds, enough to keep you tired and jumpy. The cannon crews were always working, fire missions during the day, fire missions at night. Sometimes quick, sometimes long. We'd hear the call come in over the radio, then the guns would start. You could feel the concussion through the ground. It wasn't a sound as much as it was a hit. A few minutes after the rounds go out, you'd hear the radio crackle as the adjustments were called in. Sometimes you knew what you were firing at, but most of the time you didn't. That afternoon we were reinforcing a section of bunker to thicken up the overhead. I remember kneeling in the dirt, pushing sandbags into place, and the guy next to me, Parker, saying we needed more lumber. Parker was always talking about improvements. He acted like if we just built it right, nothing bad would happen. I didn't argue with him. I just kept working. That's when incoming started. The first impact hit somewhere on the far side of the base, then another. Even closer. Then it came steady. Mortars. You could tell by the pattern. Not one big blast, a series, walking across positions. Men began scrambling for bunkers. I got into the nearest hole and pulled myself down behind the sandbags. The impacts came in fast. One hit close enough to throw dirt into our hole. It sounded like somebody dumped a bucket of gravel on a roof. In those moments you listen, you count, you hope the next one doesn't pick your number. The mortars stopped for a few seconds. That's when the small arms started, not right on top of us. At first it sounded distant, then it came closer. More rifles. A few heavier bursts. Someone on the radio said they had movement in the wire. That changed everything. When you hear movement in the wire, you know they are close. Way too close. We opened up on anything that moved with rifles, machine guns, and grenades. The claymores were going off all the way along the wire. Claymores are sharp. They had a certain sound. You hoped they were doing their job. The firing got heavy. And then you started hearing people yelling names. That's when you knew somebody had been hit. It was Simmons, who took shrapnel from a mortar round. He was still trying to fight, but he was bleeding and he was confused. He was dragged back to the medical bunker, which was basically a hole with medical gear and 22-year-old kids doing their best to patch guys back together. Those guys were amazing, but I don't understand how we all didn't die from infections. We had mortars mixed with rockets now. You could hear the rockets screaming before they hit. One landed near an artillery position. That was a bad moment. Because if the guns go down, the base goes down. We heard the blast and then a secondary sound. Ammo cooking off or something burning. Hard to tell. But it was chaos for a minute. Then the gun crews were back on it, still firing. That's the thing about artillery men. A lot of them just keep doing it no matter what. They don't have a choice. If they stop, everybody pays. We were firing defensive missions now. Pre-planned target areas, close. You could feel the pressure of it. The radio was constant. Requests, corrections, reports of movement, people asking for status. At some point, someone yelled that the wire had been cut in one spot. The wire was breached and we were laying down heavy machine gun fire. I heard calls for a medic. Parker, same guy who'd been talking about lumber, had been hit by shrapnel and maybe a bullet. I didn't see it happen. I saw him later being carried past me. His face was ashen gray. The medics worked on him while waiting for a chopper. The bird came in fast and rough in a churn of dust. Wounded are loaded first, then the dead. We had at least 2 dead by then, maybe 3. I wasn't sure of the count. We loaded them up. The helicopter lifted off under fire. You could see tracers. Another helicopter came in later. Same thing, in and out. Resupply came with it. Ammo, water, bandages, medical gear. They dropped boxes and bundles like it was a normal supply run, like the base wasn't bleeding. We carried ammo to the line, mags, belts, grenades. Then we went back to work. That's what people don't always get. You don't get a break after an attack. All the damage needs to be fixed, because the bunkers get blown apart. The wire gets torn up. The sandbags spill. The overhead cover gets weak. You fix it or you die the next time. So we filled sandbags again. We moved dirt. We stacked timber. We patched holes. You could smell the smoke and gunpowder in the air. We were filthy. We were tired. And we were still getting hit with sporadic fire, enough to keep most everyone awake. A few days later, we got hit again. This one started with rockets, 3 of them, close together. One hit near the perimeter and killed a man in a bunker outright. He didn't have time to even realize what happened. He was just gone. We pulled his body out after the firing slowed and laid him near the aid station, covered in a poncho. We were taking mortars and small arms. This time the enemy was close. We laid down machine gun fire until barrels overheated. Artillery crews were using direct fire. That's when you know they are close. We lost more men on Firebase Airborne than I ever wanted to count. Guys walking around with bandaged arms and taped up ribs, still working, still standing watch. You didn't have a choice. The base still had to function. The guns still had to fire. So you worked under pressure. You worked when you were scared and hungry. And when the helicopters came in, you watched your friends lift off, not knowing if you'd see them again. Sometimes you did, sometimes you didn't. I'm proud of the men I served with on Airborne. We kept the guns firing. So in my mind, we were successful.